Once, nestled at the edge of a quaint village, there stood a curiously quiet house. Not abandoned, mind you. It was too neat for that. But it seemed to breathe differently, as though time itself moved a little more slowly within its walls. The house was home to Elara, an old woman known for her wisdom and a collection of peculiar artifacts. The most fascinating of these was her clock. It was unlike any clock you've ever seen, with hands that didn't simply tick forward. They spiraled and spun in elaborate, graceful loops. Each hour was marked not by numbers, but by glowing sigils that no one in the village could read. Elara had always called it the Keeper, though she never explained why. Now, here is where things grow strange. You see, the Keeper was no ordinary clock. It did not merely measure time. It held it, stitched it, and unraveled it in whispers no one else could hear. And Elara was its steward, for reasons even she could not fully explain. One night, as a soft mist blanketed the village and the stars twinkled like distant secrets, Elara sat before the clock, her wrinkled hands tracing its intricate surface. She murmured words, not spells, but stories, memories that slipped through her lips like smoke. And as she spoke, the sigils began to shimmer, their light pulsing like a heartbeat. But Elara was not alone. At her window stood a young traveler, cloaked in the shadows of the night. His name was Kael, and he had wandered far, chasing tales of the mystical clock. It was said the Keeper could grant glimpses into lost moments or hidden futures, and Kael, burdened by regrets, hoped it could show him what he had missed. "Elara," he called softly. His voice carried on the mist. "I've come to see the clock." She turned, her eyes sharp and knowing, as though she'd been expecting him. Without a word, she gestured for him to enter. The room was warm, filled with the scent of old wood and herbs. Yet Kael shivered as he approached the Keeper. Its sigils glowed faintly, casting soft, dancing shadows on the walls. "What do you seek, wanderer?" Elara asked, her voice as soft as falling leaves. Kael hesitated. "I've lost someone dear. I need to know if I could have stopped it, or if it was always meant to be." Elara studied him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. Then, with a nod, she placed her hands on the Keeper. The air seemed to grow thick, and the clock began to hum, a deep, resonant sound that Kael felt in his chest. "You must give it a story," she said, her voice distant. "Time does not reveal itself for free." Kael swallowed. "A story? Your story," she said, "the truth of it, unpolished." And so, with the glow of the Keeper illuminating his face, Kael began to speak. He told Elara of his sister, Elara, whose laughter had once filled his world with light. He spoke of their adventures as children, their plans for the future, and the day she had fallen ill. He had been away then, chasing his own dreams, and by the time he returned, she was gone. His voice cracked as he confessed his guilt, the weight of it pressing on him like an unrelenting tide. The Keeper listened, its sigils brightening with each word. When Kael's tale ended, silence filled the room. Then, slowly, the clock's hands began to turn, not forward but backward, spinning faster and faster until the sigils blurred into a kaleidoscope of light. Elara's voice came softly. "Look." Kael turned his gaze to the Keeper. Within its glass, a scene began to take shape. A memory, vivid and alive. There was Elara, sitting by a river, her face alight with laughter. She wasn't alone. Kael saw himself there, much younger, teasing her with a stick he'd fashioned into a fishing rod. The moment swelled with warmth, but then it shifted. The memory rewound further, and Kael saw Elara again, this time lying in a small bed, pale but smiling. A strange peace seemed to surround her, as though she had made peace with the end before it arrived. And there, on the table beside her, lay a letter addressed to him, one he had never read. The vision faded, and the clock grew still. Kael turned to Elara, tears glistening in his eyes. "What does it mean?" "It means," she said gently, "that some things cannot be changed. But perhaps the knowing of it can lighten your heart." The keeper's light dimmed, its work done. Kael sat in silence, the weight of his guilt softening, as though the truth had unbound it. Elara smiled faintly, her eyes heavy with understanding. As the night deepened, Kael rose to leave. He turned back at the door. "Thank you," he said, and Elara simply nodded. And so, the young traveler walked into the mist, carrying with him not the answers he had sought, but the ones he needed. The keeper remained in its quiet house, cradling the stories of time, waiting for the next soul brave enough to face its secrets.